Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this from. My name is John Romano. I'm the coordinator of the TAP network. I'm here today with our next installment of the TAP Network Conversations series with a good friend and colleague, Arleys Bellorini from World Vision. World Vision, of course, has been a strong supporter and member of TAP since the very beginning. Arelys, welcome. Thanks for joining us for this conversation.
Okay, thank you so much, John, for having me in this series of conversations that TAP Network is promoting. This is great work. We are member, as you say, we are member of TAP Network. We admire and respect very much the network and think that it has been doing a fantastic, outstanding job. World Vision is a child-focused organization, first of all. It is a Christian organization that works both on humanitarian and development. We work in over 100 countries. And actually this year is our 70th anniversary. Speaking of a year of anniversary, so for World Vision, this is 70 years. We were created in 1950. And ever since then, we have focused our work on children, the most vulnerable children, and developing countries. I think that in today's shifted world, because our world has changed completely, the narrative that SDG 16 brings is even much more important. It was timely then, it was important then, but today it's the context actually ratifies the urgency and the need for a framework that SDG 16 offers on some of the foundational aspects of a society.
You know, we've talked over the years about how much things have changed, especially when it comes to SDG 16 issues, from when the SDGs were adopted in 2015 and where we are today. A lot has changed in many countries and many contexts around the world, and obviously with the COVID-19 context this year. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges that we face?
I think back then and today, there were many challenges for the full implementation of the SDGs and achievement of SDG 16 in particular. I think that some of those challenges remain. For example, one of the challenge and threats on the SDGs was to implement them in silo without an integrated approach, an interlinkage approach. I think that today that is a real threat, perhaps even more than before, because of the coronavirus disease. There are some aspects that have become much more evident, and even though they are rooted in deeper issues, I think that we run the risk that some SDGs might be addressed much more than others. The issue that we're having on this disease has to do with systems, which is much more deep-rooted. So if we address the effect rather than the root causes of it, then we will not be achieving the SDGs. And SDG 16 is core to addressing the root causes of the effect that we are facing.
SDG 16, we always said, underpinned the entire 2030 agenda, and SDG 16 was linked with every other SDG. And I think that's a great point, because I think we're now finding out in real life terms how SDG 16 matters when it comes to other things like public health, for example.
Exactly.
Why do we need strong institutions, and why do we need good governance and transparent governance to adequately respond to public health crises? And speaking of the global level, I mean, I know obviously that you've worked a lot around the UN over the years. You are one of TAP's go-to experts. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on participation and the outcomes of the UN General Assembly, UN 75, and also looking a little bit back towards July in the HLPF? Are there similarities? What are some of your reflections on participation and engagement of civil society?
We need to go back also to our roots as civil society. And for us, it hasn't been about numbers. It has been about quality. It has been about meaningful engagement. So if we go back to our roots of what our advocacy has been from the civil society perspective, we're quite far from that. And while we understand the circumstances and we understand that it has to be a virtual modality, but member states were clever enough to come up with solutions on how they can engage virtually.
Do you have any ideas for concretely, like what can we ask of governments and ask of the UN system to improve the quality of engagement? And how do we ensure that civil society is not just able to follow the discussions, but also, again, actively contribute?
So the way forward, I think there are different modalities that member states can explore regarding civil society. So one of them is just as they are having informal consultations on specific resolutions and they are connecting via Zoom or via WebEx, we could also be part of those. I would like to see those opportunities of colleagues who do not usually travel here to be able to speak at HLPF, for example, to be able to be part of the panels. There is definitely innovation that could really be applied here.
If we do improve the means of engagement in the HLPF, we then also allow voices that traditionally haven't been heard from in the HLPF processes up to this point. We allow those voices to come to the table as well. How can we ensure that that bridge between the global level and the national and local level, how do we ensure that there is a link, and how do we provide value on both ends, from the bottom up, but also from the HLPF down?
Well, actually, that's where organizations and platforms like TAP and Together 2030 and organizations like World Vision that have this wide presence across a good number of countries come and can play a role on this. I think that the process leading up to HLPF that takes place at national level and at sub-national level is critical. And when we come to HLPF, that is what we should be looking at. At national level and sub-national level, there are a number of platforms working on SDGs, and they work very strongly on with the government about the VNR report. Sometimes they are successful in their work with the governments. Sometimes they are not. So how we bring those voices? How do we bring all the perspectives that they have, that these groups are presenting to the governments and that are or are not taken on board to the global level, so that the discussion here is enriched by that perspective, and that we shine a light, we shine a spotlight on the issues that are being raised at national and subnational level.
Keen to get your thoughts on what about those difficult situations and circumstances and countries where civil society find themselves constantly under threat. Aside from like the spotlight reporting side of things, what do you think about how we can also approach some of those more difficult circumstances and make sure that civil society in those countries are heard?
I think we need to continue identifying those issues and trying to influence resolutions and declarations of the UN that are aimed at encouraging governments and calling on governments to to address that, to respect the human rights of its citizens, and to ensure the freedom of association, and to ensure all of those human rights that have to deal with the participation.
Curious from your perspective. I mean, World Vision is also part of the advisory group of the campaign for a decade of accountability for the SDGs, which TAP has helped to spearhead over this past year and a half or so. So I'm curious about your thoughts on the accountability aspect of things. Where do we stand currently, and what can we do to improve it?
I think here on accountability, we also go back to the local to global linkages. And for us, it starts at subnational level. It starts from the the planning process of municipalities, and the participation that citizens can have in there, so that they can establish the baseline of what is going to be implemented, so that then there can be an accountability continuum. So for us, accountability is not just about demanding or finger pointing at something that hasn't been done, but it's also about establishing what we would say is a very basic baseline, which is the commitments, which is the planning process at municipality and local level, and cascaded up, to the national level.
Thanks again, Arelys, for your time. And of course, as always, we look forward to working a lot more closely with you in the months and years ahead. So
thank you so much.
Great. So that's it for us. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we look forward to bringing you more of these in the months ahead.